So if you're wondering which your first tarot deck should be, the long answer is, of course, it depends on what you want out of tarot. The short answer is, if I have to tell you, start with a Rider-Waite-Smith, and then once you understand its shortcomings, jump into whichever direction you like. Because trying to find the perfect tarot deck is like trying to find the perfect car or the perfect guitar or anything of that sort. It's all going to be so situationally dependent that you're going on a long journey. But this is where I'd start. When people think of tarot, they're usually thinking of something that is the Rider-Waite-Smith or is Rider-Waite-Smith adjacent. The imagery is culturally pervasive and therefore relevant to almost any situation. The problems with it are well understood. It's also public domain, so you can get a copy from pretty much anywhere and not worry that you're robbing an artist. The issue, and the reason I just don't say buy one of these and keep it forever, is that we need some more girls in here. The court cards go page, knight, queen, king, and all of the major arcana are pretty strongly gendered one way or the other. Case in point, Hanged Man, although this spiritual concept of kind of being away and stagnant in order to develop is not limited to people of the male persuasion. It'll still read, but you do have to dodge that. How do you get around that? Can send you in a massive rabbit hole. So that's why I say just get one of those as cheaply as you can. Another option is the Thoth Tarot. This, instead of being the Rider-Waite-Smith collaboration, is the Aleister Crowley, Lady Harris collaboration. And Crowley is very justifiably controversial. I'm not going to get into that mire here. But as far as the cards go, these are one of the most packed with symbolism that you'll find in any tarot deck. You know, there's an Orphic Egg, there's Cerebus, I forget, but there's a special name of this wand, and I'm pretty sure everything down to some of the angles and the number of rays coming through the Hermit's Lantern means something, as compared to this Hermit, which is more generally talking about the idea of isolation and being by yourself for spiritual development. There's, of course, depth, but on all this, it's baked into the imagery and could also take a lifetime of study to figure out. The other direction you can go is a tradition older than Rider-Waite-Smith called Tarot de Masai, which shows up from when tarot was a card game. Now, this here is the card game Loka, which I'm using as a stand-in for an actual Tarot de Masai deck because it'll illustrate some of the differences between it and Rider-Waite-Smith. Namely, the minor arcana are pips versus the minor arcana here, like this is a Five of Cups, and this is an Eight of Pentacles. Eight of Wands, fire. Anyway, point being, you have to overcome what just happened to me, which was making sure you have an association based on, in the case of the actual Tarot de Masai, it would have been easier because it is illustrated as wands, but just 8 wands versus an imagery here, which directly speaks to a concept. The other thing that you can do is any one of modern decks that are pretty much Rider-Waite-Smith plus an update or Rider-Waite-Smith plus deliberate flavoring. We'll go through both of these. This is the Superluminaris Tarot, which in some cases does a beautiful job updating Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. The suspended one has now been made gender neutral instead of here, the Hanged Man. Death, instead of being a skeleton on a horse, is now a seed which is died and regrown. But there's also the problem of you have to deal with modern interpretations, which is this hermit being a gal doing yoga in a castle. Is that the same energy still? Do we want it to be? And this has not been as validated by time as this one. I'm not saying we shouldn't break tradition. I'm far from a traditional reader. But the point is, you have to do a lot more review, test, and improve to a modern deck than you do to this one, just because this has the benefit of kind of survivorship bias. People have been getting great results from this for years. You have to test this to figure out if this is better. Not bad. You should be doing your own testing. But also, you should be prepared for the fact that there will need to be testing involved, because there are definitely people who make these new ones that just like slap an AI art on there and charge you more money, and it's not always worth it. Here's also an example of where you have to be careful. This is the Black Tarot. Let me make sure and say the artist's name because I love this. Victoria Iva. This is a fantastic deck for certain situations. It completely dodges the gendered issues of Rider-Waite-Smith because it's all skeletons. The thing is, it's also all in this liminal space, dreamscape type situation. And if you did a love reading with this, you'd better hope you're reading for the Addams family. Not saying it couldn't be done, because after all, a skilled diviner can look at the ripples on a pond and draw a conclusion. So if you're just drawn to this, don't let me slow you down. But understand that it's going to color your readings. The prophecy is subject to the prophet, or perhaps the spirit is subject to the medium, even if we consider all things at once mundane and all things divine. Go back and watch the video on the nature of the universe if you want to try and help me understand what I mean by that. There are one or two things which I will tell you should probably avoid. I have to find them in my extremely messy office, so bear with me. They're around here somewhere. Here we go. Full episode of Dora the Explorer there in order to find them, but we got them. These, first of all, are beautiful, but they're also highly situational. This is Fabio Listrani's Tarot in Darkness. What it does is it takes the entirety of the Lesser Key of Solomon and puts it in tarot deck form. So the King of Wands is represented by the demon Baal. Scrolling on, the Fool is represented by another demon. The thing about these is, if you don't already have the occult knowledge of the entities referenced, you can't necessarily do a good job of marrying the associated tarot meaning with the entity in question. It's a fascinating system in that it merges to, I would say, adjacent traditions. It also, for the folks who are approaching tarot in a secular way, viewing it strictly as a trick of accessing your psychology or intuition, pushes the practice way more spiritual. I would not recommend one of these as something to start out. I would also resist the temptation to call a deck like this advanced. I would call it specific. There's also decks like these. This one is based on the idea of transformational alchemy and a mostly defunct internet cult. It's cool. It's definitely an artifact and an art object. Some of the art is pretty violent, so I'm not going to even crack that one open here. But, again, specific. The last one I want to show you and we won't go into the details just now because there will be a full video on this one shortly. This is an independently published one by the Master in Psychology and world traveler Arnel Ando. Out of print. A wonderful job of adding modern relevance to the tarot. Pushes deep conversation. And that's something to be aware of, is when you start getting into something here, it's going to ask something of you. And in order to know what will be asked of you, you want to have a place to start. These are generally relatively gentle. These are potent. They're also expensive. Let's not get lose track of the practicality here. This ranges between $90 and $200. Less so for a reprint of the RWS. All right, friends. I've rambled on enough. I hope I've helped you get out of the mire of what a set of cards should be and how to get started. Maybe giving you some strategy. If you want more, you know how to keep a hold of me. And have a wonderful rest of your evening. In balance and power.